And today, the Supreme Court has answered that question by a vote of 6-3.
The U.S. Supreme Court has just issued a major ruling.
Major Second Amendment case.
Major Supreme Court ruling.
The Supreme Court just rocked the nation with a 9-0 decision. The legal ground under the Second Amendment just shifted, and no one saw it coming this fast. The Supreme Court issued a 9-0 unanimous ruling that is already changing how courts across the country treat gun rights lawsuits and government overreach. This was not a narrow opinion. It was a total legal reset, with implications stretching across every state and especially into ongoing battles over assault weapon bans, lawsuits against gun manufacturers, and more. If you believe in your rights under the Constitution, you need to understand this ruling and what comes next. In this video, we break it all down, what this 9-0 ruling really says and why it is different, how it affects gun lawsuits and liability cases, the impact on future challenges to assault weapon bans, why the unanimous vote matters more than most think, how state-level bans could now be in legal jeopardy. Like this video and subscribe to stay on the front lines of the fight for your rights. Chapter 1. A unanimous decision that shifts everything. This case began with a foreign government suing an American gun manufacturer, but what it triggered is much larger. In Smith & Wesson versus Mexico, the Supreme Court rejected arguments that gun companies could be sued for crimes committed with their firearms outside the United States. The ruling was clear, forceful, and unanimous, but the reasoning behind it could redefine the scope of Second Amendment protections and how lawsuits against the gun industry are handled. And it came at a moment when similar cases are lining up in federal courts across the country. Key takeaways. The Supreme Court ruled 9-0 in favor of American gun manufacturers. It rejected foreign lawsuits tied to crimes committed outside the U.S. The opinion reinforces limits on civil liability for gun makers. This sets a stronger precedent for future PLCAA and liability cases. With this decision, the Supreme Court has effectively told lower courts that attempts to weaponize civil lawsuits to undermine the firearms industry are off the table, and that ripple is already reaching other ongoing legal fights. Chapter 2. The case that triggered the dominoes. The Mexican government filed a $10 billion lawsuit against several major U.S. gun companies. They claimed that these companies were responsible for violence in Mexico because their firearms were trafficked illegally over the border. This strategy was seen by many as a backdoor attempt to impose international gun control standards on American manufacturers, but the court shut it down unanimously, and the language used matters. Key takeaways. Mexico argued that U.S. gun makers should be liable for cartel violence. The court ruled such lawsuits violate U.S. sovereignty and law. Justices emphasized that misuse of firearms does not equal liability. They warned against using courts to bypass the Constitution. The Supreme Court made it clear. Allowing such lawsuits would open the door to endless international interference and weaken U.S. constitutional protections. That warning was loud, and it was bipartisan. Chapter 3. The law behind the decision. At the center of the ruling is the Protection of Lawful Commerce in Arms Act PLCAA. This federal law shields gun manufacturers and sellers from being sued when their products are used unlawfully by others. The court confirmed that this law remains fully intact and that foreign governments cannot override it. This solidifies one of the most important protections the firearms industry has ever had. Key takeaways. PLCAA was passed in 2005 to prevent anti-gun lawsuits. It protects lawful gun manufacturers from third-party misuse. The 9-0 ruling reaffirms PLCAA as constitutional and enforceable. Foreign lawsuits cannot bypass these federal protections. This ruling does more than just uphold PLCAA. It strengthens it, making it harder for activists or governments to dismantle gun rights through legal loopholes. Chapter 4. Why this unanimous vote matters. The 9-0 nature of this decision is not just symbolic. It shows that all justices, left, right, and center, agreed on the constitutional issues at stake. Even justices who often lean toward regulation and restrictions stood behind the Second Amendment and sovereign legal limits. That sends a powerful message to lower courts currently reviewing bans, restrictions, and lawsuits, and it makes future reversals of this precedent extremely unlikely. Key takeaways. All 9 Supreme Court justices agreed with the ruling. This includes progressive justices like Sotomayor and Kagan. Unanimous decisions carry more legal weight and influence. Future courts are less likely to challenge a 9-0 precedent. In a time of divided politics, this rare unity sends a message. When it comes to constitutional boundaries, the court is willing to draw a hard line, and gun rights are part of that line. Chapter 5. Assault weapon bans could be next. Here's where the ripple effect gets serious. Multiple state-level assault weapon bans, like those in Illinois, California, and New York, are already being challenged in federal court. This new ruling strengthens the argument that such laws are based on emotion, not historical tradition or constitutional grounding. And it adds fuel to the fire for plaintiffs who argue these bans violate both the Second and 14th Amendments. Key takeaways. The ruling reinforces the importance of historical precedent. Bruin-style tests are now even more likely to strike down bans. Courts must now examine laws through strict constitutional lenses. This ruling indirectly boosts legal efforts to overturn bans. The battle over so-called assault weapon laws was already underway, but with this new 9-0 ruling, the winds may have just shifted, and they're blowing hard against gun restrictions. Chapter 6. Pressure on state legislatures. This ruling not only impacts courtrooms. It also sends a powerful signal to state lawmakers who have been pushing anti-gun bills. By affirming clear constitutional boundaries, the court has made it riskier for states to pass laws that exceed federal protections. Legislators in states like California, New Jersey, and New York are now on notice. Future bills could be struck down faster than ever before. Key takeaways. State-level gun control laws now face more legal risk. Lawmakers are being warned to stay within constitutional limits. This ruling gives fuel to future lawsuits against extreme legislation. The political cost of passing overreaching laws is now higher. The message is clear. If state governments pass laws that defy this decision or ignore constitutional precedent, they may be inviting fast-track legal defeat. Chapter 7. Courts already responding. In the wake of the ruling, lower courts are beginning to shift their tone. Recent district court opinions have already cited the Supreme Court's language to question gun restrictions. Judges are more openly scrutinizing whether current laws align with both Bruin and the new 9-0 precedent. This means faster reversals of bad laws and less delay for plaintiffs. Key takeaways. District and circuit courts are referencing the new decision. Some judges are pausing cases until further guidance arrives. Others are fast-tracking lawsuits based on the new precedent. Bruin and this 9-0 ruling are now working together in courtrooms. This is not a one-off decision. It is a trigger. Across the country, courtrooms are realigning with what the Supreme Court just made clear: the Constitution still matters. Chapter 8. Stronger shield for gun rights. Although the case wasn't directly about the Second Amendment, its ripple effects clearly reach that far. The Supreme Court's decision reinforced the legal protections around the firearms industry, which in turn protects the infrastructure that supports lawful gun ownership. By closing the door on liability theories that could be weaponized against the Second Amendment, the court has strengthened the legal walls around it. This is a massive indirect win for the gun rights community, one that now sits in national precedent. Key takeaways. The ruling reduces legal pathways for anti-gun litigation. It fortifies the ecosystem that enables Second Amendment rights. Gun rights now stand on a firmer legal foundation. Future lawsuits against firearms will face greater constitutional resistance. In short, the court has quietly cemented new structural support around the Second Amendment. While not loud or flashy, this move has the power to alter the outcome of future challenges before they even begin. Chapter 9. Targeting the legal tactics of activists. One of the most aggressive strategies used by anti-gun groups has been litigation, not to win cases, but to drain resources and weaken gun rights through the courts. They filed lawsuits against manufacturers, distributors, and even advertising companies, hoping to win by exhaustion. But this decision significantly undermines that tactic by reminding courts that the law, not emotion, must lead. It draws a clear line between justice and agenda. Key takeaways. The court shut down novel legal claims used against gun companies. Future activist lawsuits now risk fast dismissal. The ruling narrows how far civil liability can stretch in firearm cases. It emphasizes federal limits on judicial overreach. By making it harder to weaponize the courtroom, this ruling protects everyone who believes in fair legal standards and equal constitutional rights, not just large companies. Chapter 10. The case that changed the landscape. At first glance, this case seemed limited to a foreign lawsuit and manufacturer liability. But its impact is far more profound. It sets a binding national precedent on what is permissible under federal law and the Constitution, closing loopholes that could have been exploited nationwide. The fact that this decision was 9-0 gives it immense weight and authority going forward. This is the kind of ruling that reshapes legal arguments for decades. Key takeaways. The case outcome blocks global-style lawsuits against U.S. gun makers. It has a nationwide reach due to its Supreme Court authority. All federal and state courts must now follow this precedent. It closes critical legal loopholes that activists relied upon. This ruling did not simply end one case. It changed how future cases can even be started. With the Constitution reaffirmed and legal clarity restored, this is a strategic win with lasting force, a legal earthquake that will be felt for years. The Constitution drew the line. This 9-0 Supreme Court ruling did more than resolve a case. It realigned the legal battlefield by protecting manufacturers, restoring legal limits, and defending the foundations of the Second Amendment. The justices gave a clear message to courts and lawmakers alike. No matter how creative the argument or how passionate the advocacy, the Constitution sets the boundaries, and those boundaries cannot be crossed without consequence. This ruling is not just a moment in the news, it is a reset button for the legal war on gun rights. For gun owners, dealers, constitutional scholars, and every American who values liberty, this is a victory, but it is not the end. Every future battle over gun control, civil liability, or activist overreach will now be fought on this stronger ground. That is why your awareness and your voice matter more than ever. We break down the court decisions, DOJ moves, and policy shifts that no one else will explain clearly. Like the video. Share this with someone who needs to know the truth, and comment below where you stand on this and what battles are coming to your state next. The court just drew a hard line, and now it's our job to hold that line.